Hello, good people. This is Kerry. I've decided to put out a video for us today looking at the United States of America's chart. Does seem like there's a lot going on, my country. So, so let's just take a look. I'm not sure how long this will last. If you're new to my channel or you're new to Vedic astrology, this is an overwhelmingly complex subject. I am trying to make it easier. I'm gonna say words that you don't understand, but I will try to explain them. And if you keep with me, if you keep watching my videos and following me, you will learn. You'll figure it out. I'll try to help. And I am coming up with some more educational content. So that said, let's take a look at the United States of America. First of all, birth data for the US. We celebrate our birthday as a country on July 4th. 1776 was the big day. I did a lot of work as a junior astrologer trying to practice a technique we call rectification, which is when we don't know somebody's birth time. What we can do is we take a look at events that happen with the person and we try to match them up with the timeline that we're offered with Vedic astrology, which is called the dasha system. Dasha means periods. So one of the cool things about Vedic astrology, if you come for a reading, is that we look at this map here. I think of the chart as like a map, a karmic map. And with our map, we also get an itinerary. There's a lot of different itineraries actually, but we're just going to look at the run-of-the-mill, everyday Vimshotri Dasha, which is a very standard system of timing of events for Vedic astrology. Vimshotri Dasha means 120-year period. The way it works is it's called a planetary dasha period system. And so we go through different planet periods. In this system, the order of your periods is the same, mine and yours and the United States. The same order is for everybody. There's major periods, and within the major periods, we have minor periods. And that is really what I'm going to be looking at today is like what major and minor period the United States is in. And then I'm going to also work with history because the US has been in this period 2 other times before. So I want to look just briefly through a couple of little things that stand out historically from those time periods and maybe get an idea of what's next for the United States. There's a number of people who are very unsettled at the moment, not just in the US, but all over the entire world. There's a lot of instability everywhere, to be quite honest. And a lot of people are struggling and they're in fear. And maybe we can look and just see what we think might be coming up next. So, where to begin? So when I was a junior astrologer, I did an exercise for rectifying a birth chart. When we don't know the horoscope or the exact birth time of somebody, we can take the life events of a person or a country and write them down in a timeline. And then we can do our best to reverse engineer based on that dasha system. When could that person have been born? Of course, we never really know. And when I did this exercise, it was a long time ago, maybe 30 years ago. And I went through all the history and events and I did my best and I came up with 6:30 p.m. Now, as it goes with the ratification of all of it, it wasn't like they were all sitting down together and just stamping like they do in well, they don't do that in Congress anymore either, but they weren't all together. I mean, this was a very new thing coming off of the Revolutionary War, et cetera, et cetera. So it was pretty disorganized. It's really hard to say when is that moment when we said, okay, yes, this is what we're doing. So I rectified it to 6:30 p.m. I know there's other astrologers out there who have done the same exercise and they've come up with a different time. This is the one I came up with. Jim Kelleher uses this one too. He's a Vedic astrologer from California. He's more well known than I am, and this is called the Kelleher chart of the U.S. You can call it the Kerry chart if you want. Anyway, looking at this, because, there's not 100% confidence in me that this is even the day, and especially not the time of day, I I tend to look at from the rising sign really strongly when I look at charts, and this is the best we've got. So if we trust mine and Jim Kelleher's rectification of the U.S., then the Sagittarius is the rising sign of the U.S. I don't think that's wrong. Sagittarius, a very positive sign, growth oriented, the feeling of we can do anything, very Sagittarius. Um, so possible. What stands out the most to me in the US chart is the moon and Rahu. So you can see on the left column there, the moon is in the sign of Aquarius, and Rahu, R-A-H-U, Rahu, is over there in Cancer in the 8th house with retrograde Mercury. So let's talk about Rahu and Ketu just for a second, because these might be weird words to you. Rahu and Ketu are the nodes of the moon. And the nodes of the moon they use in Western astrology and astronomy, actual science. So the nodes of the moon show us when there's going to be an eclipse. So in Vedic astrology, they're very important. Western astrology, they use them, but we really, really, really fall back on Rahu and Ketu a lot in Vedic astrology. Western astrology sees the north node of the moon, which is Rahu, as kind of your future, which direction you're going. And in the south node of the moon, which is Ketu, K-E-T-U, they see as your past, the past karma that you've done, things that you've already accomplished and been finished with. It's not completely, totally off from how Vedic astrology looks at it, but it's much more complex and diverse the way we view these two forces in our charts. So the idea of Rahu is, and both of them actually, remember they are an axis that we don't really see. They're invisible points in space, but they get the reputation for causing extreme instability wherever they might be, but in different ways. So you guys can find on my YouTube channel somewhere there, you'll find a Vedic story time about Rahu and Ketu. Go check that out. There's no video. It's just an audio, but it's a great story. Rahu ends up being depicted as this head only without a body. So Rahu, demonic looking, not very nice looking actually face, but very demonic. And the energy of Rahu in our chart, to me, the first word that comes out when I'm looking at a chart is desire. What does this person want? What do they want? And there's a lot of people who believe that both Rahu and Ketu are negative forces and there's really no good to them. I don't. I believe that there's some good to them. I believe that there's something about desire that we're here to explore, and I don't think we should just avoid it all the time. But anyway, Rahu's main keyword is desire. What desire did my soul have that brought me down into this body to do my life? That's how we look at Rahu in the chart. So desire, instability, innovation. Innovation is one of the most positive keywords I like for Rahu. Rahu shows wild things like forests and places that are not cultivated. Rahu shows foreign places, places that are unfamiliar. Rahu champions diversity. Rahu recognizes that even though we all may look different, that we all have a right to be here. Wow, that almost sounds like the United States. But also, let's remember that when Europeans came to this country, really running away from oppression, what then happened was not very nice, to be honest. there were indigenous people living here that were wiped out in some cases, pushed away in many cases, and still to this day not recognized for who they are and the fact that this is their land. So that's very Rahu, very Rahu. Okay, the fact that there is an indigenous people, Rahu, and that there's invaders that come, very Rahu, all of it. Okay, so in the chart there, Rahu is sitting with Mercury. ME stands for Mercury, and the underline on that means retrograde. So if you see an underline under planets in a chart that I'm showing you, that's what that underline means. Okay, so Rahu and Mercury are sitting in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is the sign of the moon. The moon rules that sign. It's a very nurturing sign, very kindness comes up in Cancer. Let me feed you, let me care for you. These are very Cancer signatures. And then we wonder, what is the moon doing, right? The moon is over there in the Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius is one of the strange signs in the chart or in the zodiac because Aquarius has two different rulers. Rahu and Ketu, those nodes of the moon, Rahu is just shown as a head without a body. Ketu is shown as the body that lost its head. So there's a division with these two planets. There's an implication of unity that was then ended, where there's now separation. So the idea of division and unity is big with Rahu and Ketu. So Ketu's the body, Rahu's the head. Each of them only gets to half rule a sign. Each of the signs that we know, Aries, Taurus, etc., has one planet that's in charge of it. Except for Aquarius and Scorpio. They each have co-rulers. So Aquarius is co-ruled by Rahu and Saturn. So it's an interesting sign. To me, Aquarius is the most humanitarian sign in the zodiac because Rahu and Saturn, although they seem very different, they do believe some same things. For example, the idea of Rahu really recognizes the diversity of life on Earth and cultures and people. So the Rahu in you is the one that says, oh wow, those people are all different, but really we're the same. We have hearts and eyes, and we're hungry and we're scared, right? So we're all really similar, even though we look different. So that feeling of like, you deserve to be here because you're here is very Rahu. And Saturn is the same way. Saturn kind of says, hey, hey, little soul, you got into this body to do your karma. You're in the teeming mass of other souls that are doing that on the planet. So, welcome. And actually, just like the tree and the fish and the plants, you deserve to be here. So that's why I think Aquarius is a very humanitarian sign, that rulership of Saturn and Rahu. The masses, all of us, very Aquarius. My favorite Aquarian was Abraham Lincoln. So anyway, the Rahu and Moon then are actually in what we call an exchange of signs. So Moon is sitting in Rahu's place, while Rahu then goes over to the Moon's place. So they are in a timeshare situation where they're in each other's signs. That creates a relationship between two planets that's very strong and bound up. So to me, the Moon Rahu exchange of signs in this chart is really the most signature thing. And it's the most signature thing about the United States. So the feeling of we all deserve to be here, it prevails. But it's also really complicated because We say that we're all supposed to be here, but then the native people that were here, we've kind of shoved aside. Immigration has been a huge part of the United States, and I think that's a very pro-immigration signature in this chart, is that whether you were here or whether you came here as a refugee or as somebody seeking a better life, this is your place. We're going to try to make something of this where everybody has a place at the table. At least I think that's the idea that we had. So that's what I really think of as the big signature in this chart. Other things that stand out. Rahu being with a retrograde Mercury. Mercury is very it's our everyday planet. I call Mercury the everyday planet. It helps us communicate, it helps us shop, it helps us understand things and learn things. Communication and exchange. Mercury, merchant, mercantile, money. Okay, Mercury helps us get the day done. It's the first planet out from the sun, moves around really fast. We even in the Greek mythology of Hermes, that is Mercury. We have the wings on the feet. So the idea of the messenger and the quick movement and all of that. So retrograde Mercury, you've probably heard of that. Mercury goes into a retrograde phase 3 times per year on average. And everybody knows that things can go a little bit of haywire during those Mercury retrograde times. But that retrograde energy tends to be a little wild itself. So even Rahu, the wild one, being with a retrograde Mercury, I think shows how, the United States, you kind of never know what's going to happen here. We don't have a long, long history compared to some other countries and cultures. We're trying to get to 250. Maybe that'll happen next year. We'll see. But it's that kind of unpredictable energy, and it's a very much make it work energy. So that's just isolating the Mercury retrograde plus Rahu, and then tying it in with the moon is interesting because both moon and Mercury I call the mental planets. So the moon is the part of our mind that is sensitive and emotional and can be hurt or care. It's the part of our mind that is reacting to something that happened 4 days ago, even though it's not happening right now. Emotions are hard. And the moon can show our vulnerability as an individual. Mercury rules the part of the mind that is more informational and data-driven. When I'm doing my taxes or I'm trying to find the best deal, or I'm doing business stuff, I'm using Mercury energy, my intelligence, my intellect, not my emotions. So that's an interesting thing because Rahu being a head only, like most of the trouble happens from here up, let's be honest. I mean, there's a few things down there that can get us into trouble, but for the most part, we're overthinking, we're feeling, we're sensing, and then we're desiring, and that's a lot about humans. So this is Rahu, and then the moon and Mercury are both kind of mental. So it's a very big thing in the United States chart. Okay, so that exchange is big. I'm not going to go too deeply into the fact that Moon is in the 3rd house and Mercury and Rahu are in the 8th house, but I will mention that the 3rd house is about skills and getting things going and markets and learning and hobbies and moving around. So that we do that in the United States. Be cool if we had a better train system, but anyway, that's the 3rd house. And then the 8th house is the house of deep transformation. When we come up to the door of like, hey, this is the end of things, do we give up and turn around and go home, or do we make a change in ourselves? Eighth house can be a really intense house in anybody's chart. So we've got this third house, eighth house, and all the mental planets. And I think it makes the United States a little bit hard to read. Um, and at this moment, it's really hard to read. So I'll give you a clue. The United States is in a Rahu period. So I'll get more into that, but that's it. The other big thing in the US chart is those four planets in the upper right corner there in that square, in Gemini. So there's four planets: Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and the Sun, all in the sign of Gemini. So let's just think about Gemini for a little bit. Gemini is the third sign of the zodiac. Interesting that the moon is in the third house of the United States chart. So Gemini ruled by Mercury. Gemini is an air sign ruled by Mercury. It is very thought-provoking. It is very idealistic. There is a lot of skills with Gemini, a lot of good communication skills, marketing skills, making deals, business. So, wow, the United States almost is like a business, isn't it? Some people are running it that way. Anyway, there's those four planets are all up there, and that's an interesting thing. When anybody or anything has a four planet clump in a house or sign, it's pretty noticeable. Okay, we've hit almost everything. Saturn in the lower right corner there in the sign of Virgo. Saturn, and that's the 10th house. The 10th house is business too, by the way. The 10th house we think of as your career in your chart. In physical space, the 10th house is at any given moment, it's right up here. Whatever's right up here. So the 10th house has to do with work and what kind of career you are going to do and what kind of mark you're going to make in the world. So Saturn is very prominent there. If my rising sign is correct with Sagittarius, Saturn in the 10th, with all of the other things I mentioned before. And Virgo is also a sign ruled by our friend Mercury. It's the earth sign of Mercury, having to do a lot with health and work and service and that kind of thing. Saturn being in Virgo in the 10th house, that's what I think of as corporate America. Corporate America is really strong, and I think that Saturn in the 10th house and Virgo is that signature. Okay, that's just a layout of what we've got there. So when you think about a country rather than a person and a chart of a country, the indications are going to be a little bit different. So for example, if I'm going to look at your chart and you want to know if you're going to have kids or how your kids are doing, the first place I go is the 5th house, the house of children. So this is a country. What are the children of a country? The citizens. So let's say that the 5th house of this chart is going to show us the kids of the country or the citizens or the people. There's nothing in that 5th house. If you start in the bottom left corner and go up and around clockwise, I have the signs and the houses marked on this chart. So the 5th house is void. There's nothing in there. But Aries is the sign that's holding that 5th house, and Mars is the planet that rules Aries. So you could say that Americans are very Mars-like, warlike, aggressive, also engineers, creators of amazing things, great farmers, surgeons. There's a lot of things Mars is good at. Police people, armies, athletes. Yeah, so not bad or not good. And Mars ends up in that clump of planets in the upper right corner up there. So if I'm again right about the Sagittarius rising, that is a very strong 7th house that the United States has. So what is the 7th house? The 7th house is the other people, the other countries, the allies, the enemies, all of the other people. So As you can see, the United States is very dependent on relationships. Good relationships with other countries, good relationships with its own people. The other countries in this chart would be indicated by the 12th house, the foreign places, the faraway places. In that case, it's the sign of Scorpio, the other weird sign that has two rulers. So one of the rulers is Mars, and one of the rulers is Ketu, the guy without the head. He ends up in the second house of family. That's who I see as the immigrants, the people who've come from another place and gotten here. So we have our own people that were born here, Native Americans, people who have been born here in the last couple hundred years. It's all up there in that Gemini. It's really interesting. The United States is really nothing without its people and without its partners. So there we go. All right, now I want to talk about the dasha system and where is the United States now. And then let's look back to the last two times that these things happened and understand what's happening now and maybe what could be happening going forward. Okay, so I have some notes. It looks like I'm reading it. It's because I am. All right, so when the United States was born in 1776, it was in the beginning of a Rahu period. So that Rahu period began actually in September of 1775, and then we jumped into it. So that was Rahu when the United States was born, which is pretty interesting. Now, the Rahu period in my chart, your chart, or any chart is 18 years long, a whole 18 years. Within, and we'll call that the major period of Rahu. Within any major period, we have 9 minor periods. So there's a shift every so often within that 18 years. None of these major periods are the same length. For example, the sun's major period is only 6 years, and Rahu's is 18 years. So they're not equal. But let's look at the specific minor period that we're in right now. Okay, so as I said, our country was born in a Rahu period. There was another one that ran from 1895 to 1913. And now we're in another Rahu period that began in September of 2015 and goes through September of 2033. At the moment that I'm making this video, which is September 22nd, 2025, we are in the Rahu major and Mercury minor period. That began in September of 2023, September 23rd, 2023. And it goes up until March 21st of 2026. So about 6 months from now, we got a minor period shift. And the next period will be Rahu major, Ketu minor. And that lasts for about a year. Now, when I am doing readings for people and they arrive at my doorstep and they're in a Rahu period, a lot of times they've never had an astrology reading, but they're just trying to figure what the heck is going on. Because Rahu periods tend to be really chaotic and unstable and change-oriented. And for people on an individual basis, that can be unsettling and just difficult. So it has been kind of an exciting last 10 years in the US, I'm not going to lie. We had the COVID thing and all of that. So from September of 2023, we're in this Rahu Mercury period. Next is Rahu Ketu. That's about a year. And then after that, you get to Rahu Venus. And that is April, early April of 2027, that begins for about 3 years. So I'm looking at Rahu Mercury, Rahu Ketu, and Rahu Venus. Okay, but going back. So going back to the beginning of the United States. During the Rahu Mercury period of that time, that began in September of 1783. And it went until March of 1786. So about 2.5 years, just like we're in now. All right, so if you go back to history, and I'm not a historian, I'm just curious. So you can really geek out on this and go deep into this. But during that time, we were operating under what was called the Articles of Confederation. We didn't have the Constitution yet. So that was what we were operating with. So weirdly, from my program, the Rahu Mercury period, the first one, started September 2nd, 1783. On September 3rd, 1783, that was the Treaty of Paris. You guys know what that is, right? I'll tell you. The Treaty of Paris was kind of when it became official that, like, we're not part of England anymore. We're our own country now. And I know it was like, 6, 7 years after the actual birthday, but, things take time. We didn't have iPhones then and online voting and everything. So anyway, that Treaty of Paris really kind of kicked off, like, hey, here we go. We're our own country now. And that was right at the beginning of Rahu Mercury. And that, again, lasted for about 2.5 years. Signatures of that time were like Western expansion. People were moving west. And there was a lot of conflict with indigenous cultures during that time. And things were really fragile as far as this nationality thing and being a country. It wasn't like everybody was on board and felt the same about it. It was tenuous. So there we go. Then in March of 1786, the United States moved into the Rahu Ketu period. Rahu Ketu is about a year long. And when I'm reading a chart for somebody who's in a Rahu period, I observe, and this isn't something that's written in sutras or anything like that, but I have just observed that the Rahu Ketu period, in the larger context of the major Rahu period, always seems to be a turnaround point. Like, big changes come during the Rahu Ketu time. So during that time, the first Rahu Ketu of the US, which is March of 1786 through March of 1787. So April 5th, technically 1787. It was very unstable in the US. Hey, didn't I say instability was a big thing with both Rahu and Ketu? It was super unstable. There was civil unrest. There was a lot of things going. I mean, people had rejected monarchy and they didn't want that same thing again. And so the idea of, like, too many laws or too hard of things, like, people were rejecting that. Go look up something called Shays' Rebellion. Shay, Shay, Shays' Rebellion. It happened in Massachusetts. It was farming related. But the climax, and it wasn't just one day. And Shay was a guy. He was a farmer. So it wasn't just like a one-day thing, but it climaxed in Springfield, Massachusetts, with 1,200 rebels. That was like 25th of January, 1787. So during this Rahu Ketu time, it was a big deal during that time. People weren't having it. And these articles of confederation weren't really robust enough to give good guidance for everything. So that Shays' Rebellion became a big thing. And then April 5th, 1787, we get to the United States goes to the next period, which is Rahu Major, Venus minor. That is a 3-year period. So April 5th of 1787 through 1790. Okay, so the Shays Rebellion thing really inspired the writing of the Constitution, the United States Constitution. And September 17th, 1787 is what we think of as Constitution Day. And our new government then begins in March of 1789. The first presidential election was, I think, around that time, 1789 as well. So we got a constitution, we got a president. That first election, it was the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. We didn't even have the Republican Democrat Party thing going at that time. But that's, looking back, that's Rahu Mercury, instability, Rahu Ketu, still unstable, and unrestful, but coming to a head. It was even worse, really, Rahu Ketu. And then, which then pushed us toward Rahu Venus and stabilizing, making the Constitution, electing a president, etc. So that was the first round of I'm not going to go through the whole entire history of the United States or whatever. I'm just isolating into this Rahu Mercury, Rahu Ketu, Rahu Venus. All right. So the round 2 of the Rahu period came during the turn of the century, which used to mean from the 1800s to the 1900s. So from September 22nd, 1895 until September 22nd, 1913. That was the second Rahu period. I mean, again, not a historian, but man, the Industrial Revolution was really going on then. We had these kind of robber baron industrialists making a lot of money and having, the regular people being their labor force, but it was a little uncomfortable for the labor force, I think, at that point. So within that big time, the Rahu Mercury, which is what we're in right now, that went from September 4th, 1903 until March 20th, 1906. Okay, so there's some neat things that happened during that time. The Wright brothers made their first plane flight. We purchased the Panama Canal. Theodore Roosevelt was reelected during that time. There was a lot of technical advances and industrial advancement during that time. And the U.S. started to become more present on the world stage. And we also had the rise of muckraking journalism. So muckraking journalism was the idea of journalists going in and trying to expose corruption, getting into the business and the politics of things and finding out the truth and making it known. So that's really what marked the Rahu Mercury period, the second one that the U.S. had. And then the Rahu Ketu period that followed that, we're talking March 20th, 1906, for about a year. It was very unstable as far as the stock market. If there was a lot of instability there. And then the big thing that happened during that time, it was April 18th, 1906, San Francisco earthquake. That was a huge deal. Huge deal. Anyway, so just a couple of things of that time frame. And then after that, we had Rahu Venus from April 8th, 1907 for about 3 years. So during that time, we had a lot of progressive reforms. We had like the idea of national forests being established, and national parks were next, actually. We had the Mann Act, MANN. The Mann Act was about white slavery and trafficking women. So it took away that, which is great. There There was a big disaster, I think in Illinois. It was a mining disaster. It was a really big deal. A lot of people, a few hundred people died during this mining disaster, and that led to subsequently to more reforms being established. So that's Rahu Venus. So now here we are again in Rahu Mercury. This began in September of 2023. Seems like a lot has happened since then in the last 2 years. We had an election last year where Donald Trump was reelected in November of 2024. But prior to that, one of the big deals was Kevin McCarthy was ousted as the Speaker of House. Like, that was a really big deal. Now it seems like a smallish deal, but at the time it was a big deal. Before Donald Trump was reelected, there was a lot of legal stuff and indictments against him. 34 felony count thing happened. And then we had the election, and then still in Rahu Mercury, Donald Trump's administration comes in January of 2025. And what is that, 8 months? There's been a lot of radical change, a lot of these executive orders, a lot of pushback with all kinds of legal things. It's been kind of crazy. But let's take into account also that during the spring, in March, April, May of 2025, there were all of the outer planets shifting signs. And so it really felt like the whole entire scene was wiped off and changed. So in addition to the United States being in Rahu Mercury, all the planets changed March, April, and May. And now here we are. And remember, we're in Rahu Mercury. Just going back to simple things, like we have this retrograde Mercury with Rahu in the chart in the 8th house of extreme change. So it seems like historically, when the United States gets into these Rahu Mercury periods, that there's a lot of radical change. And then the next period, that's about a year, the Rahu Ketu period, sees some planned and unplanned change. Like for that earthquake, that wasn't planned, right? The San Francisco earthquake happened in Rahu Ketu. And Shay's rebellion happened in Rahu Ketu the first time. So it's like all of this unrest is like pressing and pressing and pressing for the demand of change. So it will be interesting for us to see what happens starting in March of next year for about a year, because that's the Rahu Ketu period again for the US. So what will we do? What will happen? Make me a comment. Let me know what you thought. I meant for this to be, 20 minutes, and it's definitely not. So I hope you've enjoyed this little plunge into the chart of the United States of America. I can do more. If you guys like this, tell me. I'll do more charts of political figures or movie stars or whatever you might be interested in. So you can put your comments down there and ask me to do so-and-so or this and that. And I'll see what I can do, because it's fun for me to do these little case studies. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll be back. Take care. Bye.